Welcome, brand new episode of Squeaky Bum Time, and I'm pleased to say Keisha's back in the studio alongside me, Matthew Upson, and someone who would know all about the term Squeaky Bum Time, the one and only Lee Sharp. Gentlemen, welcome. It's just a conversation about your career and your thoughts on issues, whatever it might be. So because Keisha was a bit lazy, missed the last episode, I'm going to let you take over here.
Yeah, the last episode, I think there was 3 guests altogether with you, right, Adam?
Yeah.
I'm genuinely excited about today's one because obviously this weekend we've had 2 big derbies. Well, one has already been played. The other one is being played later tonight.
And you're talking about the East Midlands derby,
yes,
right? That's the one.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about.
Okay, good.
Not the North London one, yeah, East Midlands. But at the same time, I think derbies are a bit of a hot topic because last night something happened in a derby game in Indonesia as well, where I think over 120 fans died in post-game stampedes, and there was a brawl, and so the whole week has just been a lot about derbies and the rivalry and the intensity of it, and obviously different parts of the world you've got different sort of intensity. So I think today's conversation, I really like to dive deep with you guys together with Adam in terms of trying to understand what is it like to be a part of those derbies as a player. Because when we watch it on our television screen, we can feel the intensity, but I'm pretty sure playing in it, it's a whole different thing altogether.
I'll back it up with a stat.
Yeah.
Spurs, the ground where they've had the most red cards, apart from their own home stadium or anything, it's the Emirates. The Emirates Stadium. And I'm just thinking, in the Premier League era, I'm just thinking that has to be a correlation being a derby. It has to be.
Can you do that across other derbies? I bet if you were to probably look at other
absolutely, yeah.
teams, it would be in the top 3, let's say, or maybe the top.
What is it about derbies that makes it so special, particularly in the game now where you have so many players who aren't from the country, not from that area even, and might not fully grasp the importance of what a derby is until they play in it? I mean, North London for you, or Birmingham?
The Birmingham one was probably one of the biggest game that I played in, because in terms of North London, I was on the bench a lot. I didn't really feature much in that fixture at all. I sampled the atmosphere in the build-up and the dressing room, but in terms of playing, not a lot. So the Birmingham Villa was really interesting because Birmingham had just got promoted into the Premier League. So it was the first time we'd played Aston Villa, I don't know in how many years, over 20-something years. So the city was buzzing with it. It was a big talk, big build-up. And the matches were... to be honest, it wasn't a football match, if I'm honest. It was more just combat. In terms of clear the ball, head the ball, tackle. The football was horrible in terms of the quality. It just didn't exist. It was just who was going to scrap and get the result in those first 2 games. The one at Birmingham, and then I played in the one I'd signed in the January, and we played Villa at Villa Park. I can't remember if it was in March or April. And that was just a crazy game. It was. I just remember it really well. It was just a scrap, and football went out the window. Really,
it's because you two are opposite ends of the pitch. I'm just thinking about what it's like mentally. Because for you, you're probably thinking, do not make a mistake because it could lead to a goal. Whereas for Lee, if you lose possession of the ball, you got someone like Dennis Irwin behind you. He'll hopefully mop up for you. You're probably thinking more about you have to make a positive impact on this game in an attacking sense.
You're trying to get an inch of space, to be fair, because you don't get given a minute to think. The game's it's so intense and so fast, you don't get a second to think, so you're just trying to find that little bit of space. You're trying to find...
Do you find that affects the quality of the game?
Yeah, I think it does, yeah, because I think everyone's so like... You're trying to get your aggression levels up on you. A lot of people are like, right, we're going to war. You're in the dressing room and they're like, we're going to war. It's kill or be killed. And I'm thinking, no, I can't play the game like that. I need to chill out and relax and be able to see everything. So everything comes at me a little bit slower than usual in a game that's twice as fast as usual. So I think one thing you're trying to do is not get clattered because someone's trying to break your legs every time you get the ball. And then you're trying to make some sort of positive impact. And I think, like Matt, the games generally are not great viewing because it's so intense and so high pressure, high intensity, so physical, so aggressive. It gets a little bit scrappy and a little bit messy. So yeah, the games are not generally great to play in. But and I think derbies are really more about the fans. I think because the fans have supported their club through generations of families, I think they feel the intensity. As a player, or at least from my perspective, I'm trying to calm things down and say it's just a game of football, it's just 3 points, play the normal way you play. Yeah, the game's quicker and it's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more hostile from the fans' point of view, but you're trying to calm things down, whereas the fans like the build-up during the week. You're walking around the streets like, come on, we've got to beat these, and you're getting stick from the away fans. Oh, you're going to get battered. We're going to kick you all over, and so it's like a cup final in the fact that there's a week's build-up to it, and then you know you're going to have a week's fallout the week after. If you get beat, it's going to be horrible walking around the streets of Manchester. It's going to be, you're going to get stick off your fans. You're going to get stick off the away fans. So it's the whole surround. It's not just the 90 minutes. It's a whole package of the derby.
Well, okay, let me expand it further. What if there's something even more on the line besides pride? Because with all due respect to City, when you played against them, they weren't the powerhouse they are now. But Liverpool, and I know it's not a derby, but they are the biggest rivals, or even Leeds, where you would play as well. There's competition there in terms of the league position and trying to fight for a title. Is that an added edge for you?
Yeah, of course it is, yeah. It adds to the pressure, it adds to the nervousness of the game, knowing that not only have you got to contend with this intensity and it being a derby, you've also got to try and dig out 3 points and get a win to keep yourself in a title race
and take 3 points away from your title rivals, potentially.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's the bigger rivalry for United?
Liverpool.
It is Liverpool. It's not City, is it? I would say that the game against Liverpool has more edge to it than the City game.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I think because of Liverpool's success sort of in the 70s, 80s, and then ours in the 90s, I think it's always been Liverpool. City's a huge game. Leeds is massive as well because of the hatred and the rivalry there. But it's always been, I don't know, some say the biggest game in the world because you've got so many worldwide followers that Man United Liverpool is the biggest game you'll ever play in.
I think it was quite telling that the United fans preferred City to win the title over Liverpool.
Fair enough.
And those two sides were neck and neck for the last couple of seasons. Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the things as fans that we're genuinely curious about heading into derbies is trying to gauge how do coaches or managers approach it in the dressing room. Because obviously there's two schools of thoughts. One is you could argue that a manager could use the weight of the occasion to motivate the players, but on the other hand, you don't want your players to be too emotional on the pitch. You want to calm them down, like Lee you mentioned earlier. What was Sir Alex like heading into a derby? Did he make use of the weight of the occasion, or is he a lot more composed and calm heading into these big games?
I think he was. We had a pretty experienced dressing room, and you could always tell when there was a big game because. No disrespect to the smaller teams or lesser teams. The dressing room would be a little bit more jovial. It would be a little bit more relaxed. The lads would be messing around and joking around, and balls would be flying around the dressing room. And then it comes to a big game like a derby, and the dressing room just goes deathly silent. There's an air of nervousness, of excitement, and the manager would just walk around saying a couple of words to one or two players individually. But he would walk out going, I know you're ready. I know your mind's on the game, and you could see a whole different mindset in the dressing room from a derby or a big game as such to something that wasn't quite as big, and it was eerie. It was really eerie, and it made me far more nervous. So I'd go off into the shower cubicle with a ball and just knock a ball against the wall and try and leave everyone to it.
But Liverpool was always special for Alex, wasn't it? It knocked him off their perch.
Yeah, and I think because there was a few Scottish players that he sort of had fallouts with when he was Scotland manager, and Ken Dalglish, Alan Hansen, who I'm not sure he quite got on so well with. So there was a bit of a national rivalry as well as the club rivalry. But yeah, Liverpool was always his massive game, and a few times we went to Anfield and he's changed formation. We've tried to play five at the back like they did and match him up on the pitch and being all over the place. Never really worked on it in training and just went Thursday or Friday. Went right. We're going to play this formation. We're all sat there going, what is he doing? He's worrying about them rather than us making them worrying about us. And so Anfield was not a great place for us for many games while I was there.
McManaman was the one he was.
Well, there's a few. Nigel Clough scored a couple against us. Yeah, it was just a really tough place for us to go.
And in a scenario like this for you, Matt, I mean, are you looking at your big players to really step it up in such a high octane match?
Yeah, I think you are. I think you look to those in nearly every game. I think a lot of it is about the players, and again, it's no disrespect to any position, but it's almost like sometimes that the players that you know are going to be a bit more workmanlike are going to have to be really solid. And they're the players I think you look to in those occasions to be a 9 out of 10. And if they are, I think you've got a massive chance, because like I said, the game's more about mentality than quality sometimes. I think you'll see that a lot. I mean, this fixture, we were saying on the way here, weren't we, that it can be a bit of a disappointment sometimes. I mean, the game yesterday in the North London derby, I thought was quite a good footballing game, but that's because it didn't quite have the same intensity of what a North London derby maybe has in the past, in terms of pressure, Spurs really getting out, getting after Arsenal, the amount of tackles. I know we saw a bad tackle from Emerson, but that was just one out of frustration. It wasn't like, for me, like a really committed, hard challenge. So it was allowed to be more of a football game. Whereas if I reflect back to the Birmingham ones, it was just the type of players, centre-backs, your full-backs, your goalkeeper, you're solid, and then you might have, we had like a Christophe Dugarry that was magical at times and won a game. And they pop up and steal the show, you know. And myself, Robbie Savage running around in midfield, tackling people, tackling the corner flag, you know, like he would be everywhere. And it suited us to a degree with how we played. And we had a lot of success in that period against Villa. In fact, for a couple of seasons, I don't think they could beat us. And the Birmingham fans kind of had the bragging rights of that in the city, which was big. Because it'd been years of being suppressed, and Villa being the team that was, you know, have a huge following across the world, across Europe especially.
Robbie Savage, would you take him to any battle based on what you just said?
I say that those games he performed well in, really well. I can't knock him. You know, he would upset people. Got Dion Dublin sent off in one just through annoying him and being all over him, and Dion lost his cool and he headbutted him, and you know, that's mayhem. It was just absolute mayhem. And it felt like it on the pitch. There was not a moment. You never had a chance to really put your foot on the ball, have a touch, get your head up and think, right, I'll pick a pass. It just didn't happen. It came to you and you just got rid of it. Either found a pass, one touch, or just cleared it.
Did you trash talk on the pitch?
Occasionally.
Give me an example of what you would say.
Well, I would trash talk or be more in response. So somebody might be giving, you know, whatever it might be, and it would just be, yeah, okay, I can sit you down in a minute, or we'll wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens.
Because you're a big boy.
Or, well, not so much. I just used to like the physical challenge in terms of running.
Yeah.
Anything down the side or into space. I almost used to like, I want them to put the ball in there, just so I could, you know, run and tackle and smash one out into the stand and smash something. Yeah.
Put them to Rose.
As a defender, that's not probably like scoring a goal.
Yeah.
You know, that's the same feeling.
It gets us bigger cheer, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, if you
does.
clean someone in a derby and put the ball into touch as a defender,
If
the whole crowd goes up.
Yeah.
It's as good as
if you're on the touchline and that gets spun in the channel, and you know you've got the pace to get there, and the centre forward's going as well, and you can go and ball and everything into touch. That's your dream. That's Lee putting it in the top corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee, who stands out in your mind in terms of being a trash talker against you on the pitch?
Against us?
Yeah, but someone who was up against you, a right back or...
Oh, I've very rarely had it, to be fair. The only bloke I had really do it was a guy called... oh, God, what was his name now? Played for Sunderland. We played at Old Trafford. His name will come to me in a minute. And I was only 19, but they'd given a 19-year-old kid his debut at Old Trafford. And for the first 45 minutes, I probably had the best 45 minutes of my life. I absolutely trounced this guy. So obviously, at half-time, the manager's saying, right, Sharpie's having a lot of joy down the left. Get him the ball and just get yourself in the box. And at half-time, they'd taken this young lad off and they'd put a midfielder. What's his name? He was oh, it will come to me. But it was a real aggressive... And obviously, the ball's come to me first couple of minutes, and I think it's from Dennis, and I've sort of flicked it round the corner to Mark Hughes to go for a 1-2. And as I've gone to run for the 1-2, he sort of pinched my bicep and said, listen, you run past me once this half and I'm going to break both your legs. And I just sort of run off and went, well, you've got to catch me first.
Yeah.
And I ran off, and then he said something else to me. I went, listen, I said, you've got Brian Robson to deal with. I said, I'm not going to say a word.
Yeah.
And I told Robbo, and Robbo smashed him about 6 times. And
As he do.
so I just left. I just started laughing at him. So I was,
Because I can imagine you being a bit of a target at times because you've got the skill, the flair at the side, and you were a poster boy as well. Girls had your picture up on the wall, didn't they?
yeah, I mean, we had the thing was that myself, Giggsy, and Kanchelskis could all take a kick in, but we couldn't really kick back to hurt anybody. But we knew we had a team that could. So we had like Bruce and Pallister at the back. We had Robson, Keenince in midfield. We had Cantona and Hughes up front. So if generally what would happen is we'd take a couple of kick-ins first half, and then if we came off at half time and no one had given this guy a bit of a reducer, as they call it, the manager would go off, and who's looking after him? He's getting battered all over the place, and no one's laid a finger on the fullback. And you'd have about 4 hands go, I'll sort it, I'll sort it, I'll sort it.
Straight away.
And then straight away, next half, they're just getting pounded by 3 or 4 different players coming in, smashing them all over the place.
It seems like in most instances, you're kind of keeping your cool when you're up against all these sort of challenges and trash talkers, because you know subconsciously you've got individuals at the back who's going to back you up. But were there any instances where you actually completely lost it as well on the pitch? As calm as you tried to stay, but someone just got under your skin and just you completely lost it?
No, not for me. I'm not really that way inclined. I'm not that aggressive to sort of lose it. And when you know players are on the pitch that can sort things out, generally me, Giggsy, used to just laugh at people that kicked us. Like, we know what's coming to you.
And to be fair, that might just get under their skin even more, right?
It does. That's exactly what I mean. Even, you know, we'd go to Ellen Road and the ball would go out near the corner flag and you're right in front of their cop and people are abusing you and throwing things at you, and I just stand up and just smile at the fans, and it would wind them up, it would wind the players up, and all of a sudden they're losing their concentration a bit because they're then trying to kick you rather than get the ball, and that's when you can...
Didn't you find, though, the worst players in terms of leaving a bit on you are the ones that never said anything?
Yeah, always. Yeah.
The players that talk about it don't generally do it that well, and it's the quiet ones that say nothing. Because
you don't know it's coming.
You don't know it's coming, and you don't know it's building, and it just comes from nowhere.
The ones that are getting mad and saying things to you, you're virtually waiting for it and looking for it, and you know it's going to come and when it's going to come. The ones that don't say a word that you annoying will just come on the blind side and absolutely clean you. Yeah. And that's the danger.
It's a true saying. That's the quiet ones, isn't it?
Yeah,
to look out for.
But what about in training? What about in training? Did you ever get taken out by any of your teammates?
Yeah, well, training was like a match day. We played, you know, people like Brian Robson and Roy Keane would not train any other way. Robson would pull people to one side if they were given the ball. He would have bets with, when Paul Ince and Roy Keane first came to the club, he would have a £10, £20 bet with both of them who gave the ball away the most. So they were concentrating every day in training not to give the ball away. And we played full intensity. If training wasn't like a match day training, the manager would stop it, run us around the pitch and say, listen, you can't get away with things like that on a Saturday. We play like we do on a Saturday on here. So people were kicking lumps out of each other. The training was intense. It was always high tempo.
So you got no protection there, though?
No, you had to look after yourself in training.
In training, but on a match day, it's a different story. You got your teammates.
Match day, they look after you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that was good to know.
Matt, what is the craziest atmosphere that you've ever played in?
I think I probably have to go to Greece. Greece or Turkey. I found those atmospheres just...
We were Turkey.
Amazing.
Yours is the famous
Amazing.
one.
Yeah.
And I remember going to PAOK Salonika with Arsenal in Europe very early on in the Champions League, I think it was, and it was probably my second season at the club, or I was 19, 18, and I was warming up. And first of all, we went out. We got there an hour and a half before kick-off. It's like deathly silent. And I remember Ian Wright going down the steps, walking out onto the pitch, and all of a sudden, this noise just came out of nowhere, and their end was nearly full. And flares were going off. They were jumping up and down on each other's shoulders. It was like we just come out. You know, you go out to look at the pitch and there's no one there. Yeah. It's an hour and 15 before kick-off, full. and I thought, oh, this could get a bit tasty. Like this looks a bit lively. So we went back in, came back out for the warm up, and it was, you know, a big tunnel came down along the walkway from the steps that go down and then came up. And I thought, why is that there? Well, you knew why there was a metal tunnel there. All you could hear was ting, 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 ting. The whole time there was objects
being thrown,
just pelting off the top of this tunnel. I thought, jeez, like it. And it didn't sound like small things either. Some of them. And I was warming up along the side, and I was down by stupidly, I got too close to the stand, inexperience, and I was stretching by the corner flag, and I felt something brush the side of my head. I looked down the floor, and it was like a big battery.
Jeez.
And it just glanced. I felt the air off it go flying past me. And I remember looking down thinking, oh, if that hit me, I think I'd have been in trouble. And you kind of wander back into the middle of the pitch and think, well, I need to just keep warm up in the centre here. That was what it was like. And that atmosphere was unbelievable. You've really felt like this is more than a football match here. And I can't remember, I don't know, I think we might have got beat.
I was about to ask, what was the result?
I think we got beaten. It's either 1-1 or we got beat 1-0. Either way, in terms of quality, we were miles ahead. We were without Dennis Bergkamp because I think we were too far in terms of for him to travel because we flew out there. But I think we might have just scraped away with a point and just literally got out. But it was a really hostile atmosphere. That's probably the most intimidating environment I've ever been to play a football match.
Because I know the other famous one, I mean, when you got the police going up against you, that's questionable.
Oh, Galatasaray.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was, you turn up at the you get off the plane and come out the airport and there's like 1,500 fans with "Welcome to Hell, you're all going to die." The bus got stoned coming out the hotel. We stayed on the river, and there's boats going up and down the river playing music and sounding foghorns all night so you can't sleep. And the bus is getting bricked and shaken when you go into the ground and turn up at the ground. There's armed police with shields and
truncheons and all that.
And they're sort of giving you a dig but actually trying to protect you. And then we similar sort of thing, we walked out 2 hours before we walked out before the game.
And they're there.
And at Galatasaray, I don't know whether it still happens, but they don't use, the main fans don't go behind the goals, they use the sides of the pitch. And we walked out and both sides were packed and it was quiet when we walked out, and then all of a sudden we came out and this roar went up. And this side of the stadium was silent while this side of the stadium sang at that side. And it was like da 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 da, and this one went da 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 da. And it was like da 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 da, and we're like, Jesus, what is going on here? It was unbelievable. And then obviously bricked at the end of the game, coach bricked again at the end of the game. It was so intense. It was incredible.
Because even when you were being led back down, the police were supposed to protect you, but they didn't exactly protect you.
There was a few of the lads getting sort of a bit of abuse off the police. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Can you imagine that?
Like armed police with like the helmets on and the visors and the big
shields and
truncheons, and they're sort of giving you a dig as you're walking down. And
that's crazy. It's fresh in my head because I was reading Schmeichel's book and he talks about it.
Yeah.
And Cantona squaring off against.
Yeah, Cantona was
against the police. I mean,
but those games, you talk about keeping your cool, and we're talking about derbies. They're the games because all of that is literally there to level the game because you're turning up. You're a better team.
Oh God, yeah.
Than what they were. Arsenal turned up at that. We were a better team than them, but they're trying to level the playing field. And clubs do it in various different ways. You know, leave the grass long on the pitch.
That's the other thing.
Turn the heat up in the dressing room. Whatever all these things are that you've experienced over the years.
Yeah.
But that one there in particular, that's just there designed to get a Cantona, a player to literally just get sent off.
Yeah, it is.
And try and balance the game out. And that's the role that the crowd know they can play.
One of the things that I'm very curious about is how do you guys manage these sorts of atmospheres? Because I think we've spoken to a few ex-pros here before as well, Adam, I remember. And a lot of them say that in most games, yes, the noise levels can be loud, but as pros, they tend to block it all out and focus on the game, and you don't so much hear what's happening in the background. But were there instances or games in which it became an absolute struggle to just keep yourself focused on the match in itself because of everything else that was happening around you?
The hardest thing I found And I remember later on when I went to Besiktas with Stoke in the Europa League, is I couldn't hear anyone. And as a centre-back, the amount of times you need to hear communication, and I'm shouting to midfield player to get out, press the ball, dragging people in, you couldn't hear. We'd sit this close and I'd shout at you and you'd struggle to hear it. It was so noisy, the noise. And I think that's something that definitely affects the communication on the pitch.
I also think that when things are that loud, it actually affects some sort of bit of your nervous system, and because you can't hear and you can't communicate, it's actually unnerving. In the fact that if it kicks off here and no one can hear me, we're in massive trouble. But I think as far as the noise, though, I think it's white noise until the ball goes out of play. And then when you're going off to get the ball for a throw-in or a corner,
then it comes back.
Then you can hear individuals, you can hear a certain
personal,
person, and that's when you sort of hear in the chants and what they're sort of saying. Obviously not when you're playing in Turkey because you have no idea what they're saying. You can just feel the animosity.
You got a rough idea.
You know it's not very pleasant.
Was there ever a game where you couldn't hear Sir Alex for one half? Because obviously where you were on the pitch would have been a lot closer to manager than where Matt was on a pitch.
I was trying not to hear him every game.
I was going to say, would you rather not hear him?
I don't want to hear him. Okay. No, I mean, in big loud games you're struggling to hear, but then if you're playing wide and the manager's right there by the door, he'll always sort of just pull you over and say, just tell him to do this, watch this and do this. And so if you're on the touchline near the manager, there's no escape at times, but generally you don't really listen to the manager during the game, to be fair.
Yeah, you think
you don't, because the manager's shouting on stuff and you're in the thick of it. And Brian Robson or Roy Keane for us was the person that we listened to on the pitch. The manager might at one time try and change a formation, say, "Oh, you go and play here, you go and play here." So you listen to that. But generally, if the manager's going, do this, or come on, and you're not really, because you don't know whether he's going to say something good or bad. So you're generally concentrating on your own game.
He probably wouldn't try and micromanage your game though. He'd want you to go and make your choices, and that's the whole point of having you on the pitch and trusting you to make the right choice.
Did you enjoy that, being the captain on the pitch when you were at West Ham?
Yeah.
And being the one that's shouting instructions?
Yeah, I think it's something you grow in to as you get more experienced and older. I really enjoyed that, and I tried to make talking a big part. I used to try and really get out of my comfort zone in terms of how much I spoke to people on the pitch and over. I don't think you can ever do it enough, even if it's noise. Tony Adams used to shout noise sometimes, and it'd say what I'm saying might not make sense, but you can hear me and you know where I am.
At all times?
At all times, even if it's just, get up, whatever noise it is. You'd rather have that than nothing.
Do you dig out players on the pitch, though? Or do you wait to get in the dressing room? Depending on the severity of the situation, of course.
Yeah, I think, either or. Depending on what, like you say, whatever the situation is. I'm sure Lee's been told politely a couple of times by by other players.
You have to, because it's in the moment, and if you're not doing your job in the moment, you're going to give a goal away. So, whether it's tracking runners or whether it's come inside or the ball's on the other side and Robertson will be pulling me in, so there's less of a gap here, or there's an overlapping fullback, I've got to go. The fullback's talking to me about you stay, I'll go, you stay. That's one thing. From school football to playing football, or amateur football, that's the biggest difference, I think, is talking on the pitch.
Yeah.
And I think you probably saw that a little bit more with COVID, with no crowds. You heard everyone talking all the time because you don't hear it with the crowds. But the communication and the talking on the pitch is non-stop. I mean, I wasn't a big talker on the pitch majority of my career, but we had players in the team that would do it constantly, a bit like Tony Adams. They would just talk and talk and talk and talk. So you know exactly what's happening, when things have got to be done, where you've got to go, where you've got to be. You're constantly being told.
Did you talk back if you felt you were being unfairly spoken to? Because no, never.
No.
Did anybody try to talk back against you when you were captain?
Yeah.
But it never got to the point like a Bowyer, Dyer.
No, clearly not. I was never involved in that. But that's when you might then go back to the dressing room.
Yes.
That's when after the game you might go and have a conversation that might be a bit more forceful, or in that environment, and maybe the manager might you know, managers would get involved sometimes, and would say, you need to listen to what he's saying, because what he's saying, you know, if the manager knows that discussion's going on and it can't get resolved between the players, I think managers then step in and they deal with it, because ultimately as players we're each other's peers, aren't we? I know you've got captains and more senior players, whatever, but if a manager comes in and weighs in, then you kind of put it to bed.
I don't think I've ever had anybody argue or question back to Brian Robson. But loads of players have come into the dressing room and the manager said something, they've stood up to the manager, and there's nearly been fights so many times when the manager's come in and said something and the player stood up and not agreed with him and going, well, I'm doing this, and the staff have pulled the manager away and the players have pulled the player away. But very rarely has it ever happened with Brian Robson as the captain.
Did you not find that sometimes the manager wanted that reaction?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
and it would be that would be measured.
Yeah.
It looks emotional.
To get the back up.
It looks emotional, but that it would be measured.
Yeah.
And then try and get a reaction out of you. And sometimes it'd be successful because you're emotional at that time. You've come off the pitch. You're being criticised or told something that you don't agree with. Obviously, heat at the moment. You kind of, like what Lee's saying, you fight back.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes managers know that you're going to do that and they want to get you
riled up.
Yeah.
As a captain, Matt, how do you manage that part of the communication with, say, for example, players that come outside of England from completely different backgrounds and cultures, and they might not be necessarily used to the approach that's prevalent in the English dressing rooms, and how do you manage those kind of situations?
Well, that would be, and I think as the game, that became more apparent in the game in terms of different languages, different cultures, different personalities, probably more varied. Then that would be a real skill for the manager, because you almost need to know every player, what reaction you're going to get. I think that's a big part of management, to be honest, knowing that what players you can push.
Was there an expectation from the manager that, besides me, I need my captain to be aware of every player and what works for them as well? Yeah,
possibly, but you know, you got to bear in mind that you are more. Your first port of call is to take care of your own business, and you can't be in glass houses. You can't throw stones. So unless you're taking care, I would say 70% of your time is my performance, because that's the most important thing. I'm doing that for the team. I'm doing it for myself, and then around that would be the communication, the having half an eye on other people's stuff, and you would know what players you could say certain things to, and I would know that I was a player that sometimes a manager would come into a dressing room. You might have seen this, where they would know they'd want to have a go, but they'd know what players they could do it to, and that would happen as well, where they could say something to me that they might not be able to say to someone else. And that used to frustrate me a little bit, if I'm honest. And they'd know what players they could push, and what players would react, and what players wouldn't cope, I suppose.
Would you like to have managed the young Lee Sharp? Your age now, where you are now, when you look at yourself when you're young.
Yeah, I think so. But I think for me it was a harsh learning curve, because I was in the team so young, with so many experienced players, with such an aggressive, powerful manager. I could take a shouting out. I don't mind that. Yeah, I've not performed. I've not played well. I know you don't have to tell me when I've not played well. And I put more pressure on myself than any manager, fan, newspaper, whatever. No one can put any more pressure on me than me. And I know when I've played well. I sort of know when I've played all right. I know when I've played well, and I certainly know when I've played. So the manager coming off and me, I can take that. That's not a problem. I can take that. But what I then want is the manager to come to me on a Monday and go, right, this is what you did wrong, or this is why you played bad. This is what we're going to work on this week. This is how we're going to put it right. Here's a couple of drills for you. After training, just do this, this and this. Just do this, this and this. And I'll go, yeah, fantastic, thank you very much. And then you've put the hours in the week in training, that becomes a habit come match day. So you don't have to think, oh, I need to be there, or I need to do this. It just becomes a habit that you're just working on and working on becomes natural.
Repetition.
To go into the game, yeah. So but we never got that Monday chat to say, let's just do a bit of this, let's just do a bit of this, let's just do a bit of that. It was always like, sort yourself out. And as an 18, 19-year-old kid, if you don't know what you're doing wrong, how do you put it right? So that was my only gripe, if you like, that we didn't get told how to put things right that we were doing wrong.
It's funny you should say that, because I've read this theory about Dele Alli, and along those lines, in that he became a first teamer so young. So he's still very young. He's only in his mid-20s now, but he got brought in as MK Dons. He arrived at Tottenham, Pochettino, and he had his greatest success under Pochettino. I mean, he was playing the semi-finals of a World Cup in 2018, let's not forget. But the moment things start to change, he's never been through that youth coaching setup of understanding different parts of the game, different aspects of the game, different systems. It had been Pochettino. And when things didn't go well, he didn't know how to adapt. And then he found himself at Everton and various managers at Spurs before that. And now he's playing in Turkey. And it's along those lines of what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I missed out on the coaching, the youth setup at Manchester United. So I did Torquay for a year, played first team football as a 16-year-old kid at Torquay in the 4th Division.
Not Megan Gary Stevens.
Not making Gary Stevens. But playing with men. So sort of get brought up on the physicality of it and the pressure of having to play a first team game and having to get results. But then when things, I was a 16-year-old kid, so sent out there with an experienced team going, give the ball to Sharpie and get in the box. He'll take people on, he'll get crosses in, you just get in the box. So then you come into the United team at 17, 18, and you're just told, just go and do what you want to do. If you have a bad game, you're 17, 18, it doesn't matter. But then when you've been in the team for 2 or 3 years and you get to 19, 20, and you're still having a bad game, and you don't know how to put it right. We've also talked yesterday about you go through this period of just go and enjoy yourself because you're young enough and you're not expected to play well. You're expected to have the odd bad game. So just go and do it. To then get to, you've been in the team a couple of years now, so you shouldn't be having a bad game. And how to deal with the mentality of, how do I keep myself when I'm not playing well? How do I still come off the pitch playing 7 or 8 out of 10 when I don't really know what I'm doing wrong and how to put it right? And you've got this extra pressure on yourself. The fans have got extra pressure. The manager's got extra responsibility on you. That's why for me to go and play for England at 19 was like me playing for Man United at 17. So I could go out with the freedom that it doesn't really matter. I can go and express myself. If it comes off, it comes off. If it doesn't, I'll have another go, and then I'll have another go, then I'll have another go, because I've got time to learn. Whereas at United at 19, it was like, right, you've got to do it today. You've got to do it this week, next week, the week after, the week after.
Each result matters.
Every game matters. You're playing with some big players.
What enabled you to do that then? Because if we're going to liken that to Dele Alli, that's almost identical in the sense that he used to play in a carefree fashion, and he would pick up positions, and he might give the ball away 3 times in a row, but then one thing would happen. That's how I remember him.
Yeah.
The time he was cheeky, he was creative.
But he lacked that developmental phase of being a younger player.
But what is that?
Where the results don't matter as much.
Yeah, but I think that you learn more by doing what you did than
In
what you would in development.
You have to,
playing
don't
it
you?
in men's football.
And
all that. There's no better learning. You learn 4 or 5 times as fast doing that than what you would going through development systems. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So that for me doesn't quite add up.
Yeah, I probably learned a lot from one angle, but not a lot from another angle. So they're just different angles, aren't they?
Yeah.
I suppose. I mean, Dele, I don't know. It was just you just knuckle down. I don't know. At United, there was always someone that was ready to tie. I had Ryan Giggs coming through. I had Andre Kanchelskis on the other side. So it's like you either knuckle down and play well and keep yourself fit and work hard in training. Don't give the ball away. Do the basics right. Help your fullback out. Get up and down the pitch. So that's what you learn.
It's relentless though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's relentless.
Yeah. And you don't realise how relentless
No.
until you step away from the big clubs and realise that actually there's only 4 or 5 people in the squad that can come into the first team now. So a few first teamers are quite safe. Whereas at a place like United, there's pretty much 2 players in every position. So if you're not doing it, apart from your captain, your goalkeeper, and probably your centre forward and your centre halves, everybody else is interchangeable.
and they could be sold, as Alex quite famously would do if.
Don't mess about, yeah.
No, he's not afraid to freshen things up.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned just slightly earlier, which is the concept of how at the top level, at the elite level, there isn't much that separates each player from the other. It's tiny bits of differences. It's the mental side of the game. It's marginal gains or marginal differences that separate players and separate teams from victories and defeats. What were some of the unorthodox ways that you have given yourself a bit of an edge in a game or in a season or heading into a battle with a particular player, just to get the mental side of the game right up there?
Well, I think it comes down to decision making in tight situations, in pressure situations. Some of it would come from the manager's input. So the manager would have, I'm sure they do it all the time now, where the manager will have, if you're playing Aston Villa on Saturday, Aston Villa will be watched by the scouts for the last 6 games. They'll know whoever's playing right back, whether he's a centre-half playing right back, whether he's a right winger playing right back, whether he's a left-footed right back, whether he switches off like Alexander Trent-Arnold. Does he switch off when the ball's on the other side so you can dip in front of him when the ball's coming in? Would he rather take you down the line and race you, or would he rather show you inside? Will he overlap you? So you have all this information that you know going into the game of strengths and weaknesses of that player. And then it's about you keeping calm and keeping an eye on him and being aware throughout the game of where you are, where he is, where he's looking. I'm gonna go on the outside of him, so when he's watching the ball over the other side, he looks over his left shoulder at me, he sees me there, and then once he's seen me there, I'm coming in here because he still thinks I'm there. So it's about these little, like, I can see he's just saw me, he's just seen me there, so I'll go over there. He thinks I'm going to go in there, so I'm going to go down there. It's really tiny.
But how important is that first reaction to a challenge from you, or the first challenge you put in on somebody for yourself, Matt, in the course of a game, particularly in a derby game, that you're there and you mean business, the psychological advantage that can bring?
Yeah, I think, the phrase would be like you put a marker down, don't you? You would put a marker down by first time you get the ball, you might go at someone.
First
you might knock it beyond them and run.
First time I get it,
I'm just
knocking it to the corner flag.
Let's see what they got.
Let's see what you've got. Yeah,
let's see what you've
got. If we win a throw in, fair bit. If he takes it off me, fair. But I know now.
Yeah.
He can race me.
Yeah.
So now I've got to change my tactics a little bit.
Yeah.
For you, what about your reaction if someone tries to leave a marker on you? Would you just get up, smile, and
Oh God, yeah.
That's important for you.
Yeah. I didn't care about being kicked. I was quite happy if someone wants to.
But you let them know that. You let them know that I don't care what you're going to do.
Oh yeah. I don't react. I just get up, smile, and go. Yeah. It's a good one. It was a good one. You caught me. Well done.
And then you celebrate in the corner flag.
And then
as an Elvis.
Yeah. I would never. That was part of the job for us as a winger. That's part of your job. You get kicked, you get up. You got people like him wanting to smash you.
Well, yeah, because
leave a marker on you. And
it's the flip side. I mean, did you consciously think about, I have to lay a marker on this individual?
Yeah, I would. A lot of them would be like, for me, would be a lot of the time would be first goal kick. First goal kick, your
the opposition goal kick. Okay.
Yeah. If that goes long, that first ball, especially if you're playing against a player that's aerially good in the air, I just wanted to eat that up.
You relished it.
Just go and head that. Win that one.
Who was the most?
You're not going to win a header today.
Who was the most difficult player you've ever had to play right up in the air?
In the air, Duncan Ferguson, I think.
Oof. Oh, he was aggressive.
He was horrible. He was horrible. And he'd start at the fullback
and run towards.
And I used to shout at the fullback, make sure you block him.
Poor fullback.
You block one of them. Fullback's like, all right. You deal with it, Matt. And it would be across the face of you, which is the worst type, because he's challenging really fairly, but you know that you're gonna. It's a glancing blow, isn't it, as opposed to anything, and your arms would have to be up. He was, and he could leap. His timing was impeccable.
Oh, he was a good player, wasn't he?
Timing was impeccable.
He actually had good feet as well.
Yeah, good play, coming to his feet.
Quick,
he was more towards the end of his career.
He was a good
so
player.
He probably wasn't as mobile as when he was a bit leaner and more wiry. He was a real handful, wasn't he?
I used to smash Pally all the time.
He was a real
handful.
handful.
Come off with scars and cuts and.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's legitimately beaten up robbers in his house and been to prison. So I mean, he takes it into the real world as well as being a hard man.
Yeah.
You talk about hard man.
He was a good player.
He was a good player as well. Yeah,
good player.
He's not the man whose house you want to rob.
No. Well, he's sitting with you in his boxer shorts, having beaten you up and called the police.
Yeah.
So
They obviously couldn't have known. Surely they didn't do their homework.
no, Duncan Ferguson. Okay, I think we're at the hour mark now, so I'm going to ask, what is your favourite derby memory?
I think that, there's a couple. We were 2 down and 1-3-2 at Main Road, but I think that was when Keeney scored the winner. But I'd have to go. We were 2-1 down and came back to draw 2-2, and the pitch was like a farmer's field. It was bouncing all over the place, and I got put down the left, and the ball's bobbling, and I sort of on full tilt. I put this crossing on the off. It sort of bobbles, and I hit it on the off volley right onto Cantona's head. And he sort of smashes the header in, and then we both grab each other by the side of the head, and we're like, yeah! Like, in front of a packed Main Road house. I think that's probably my best memory of a derby.
It's great that you're talking about being away from home, because I guess I know it's nice to be in front of your own fans, but to do something like that away from home, in front of their fans, makes it a little bit more special.
I mean, I've scored a couple at Old Trafford against City, but the comebacks at Main Road make it even more special.
Yeah. Matt, what's your favourite derby memory?
Mine's away from home again at Villa Park.
Away from home. There
That
you go.
that first derby game, Birmingham Villa, in the Premier League. That's just a phenomenal game.
Who was up front for Villa that day?
Dion Dublin.
Did you leave a mark on him? Because he's
he left a mark on me, I think.
I was about to say.
Under my chin.
He was pretty
I've still got the scar right under my chin. I think I chipped my tooth as well.
He was pretty good at that day.
Yeah, he could bash an elbow in.
He was one of them like
and subtle as well. It wasn't like obvious. Didn't get pulled up for it.
No.
He's a nice guy.
Oh, he's a lovely guy. He was my roommate a little bit. United.
But could be a bit tasty. Very subtle with how he would do it.
Yeah.
But he ended up getting sent off. Robbie Savage did his thing, and it was just again away from home, which is weird.
Yeah.
It's just like you say, sometimes
Makes
it brings
more
that
sweet,
to or like that you've got to really hunker in. Like as a team, you're up against it.
I'm convinced
Behind
it's
enemy
because
lines.
it's away from home. Like, why do we remember Arshavin scoring 4 against Liverpool? Because it was at Anfield. Why are we going to remember Trossard? Because he scored the hat-trick at Anfield. It's away from home, which just adds a little spiciness.
Definitely.
To celebrate, we'll get Dion Dublin's dube, that instrument he's made, I think.
Should do,
And we'll sit down and play the dube. You know about this?
No.
He's invented a drum.
It's a drum, which people...
He's a massive musician. It's all his family's brothers. One brother's a drummer.
Okay.
Dion learnt the saxophone while he was at United. I think he still plays the sax. Another brother plays something else. The sit-down box where you play a dube. It's got like
Professionals
a bass,
use it, like for
snare.
acoustics.
It's a proper. It's really
So
cool.
And he's invented it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's some professionals use it as well because it's great for acoustic settings, and you can literally it's your chair, but it's also your instrument, and it's the dube, I believe it's called.
It's like he's got copyright.
I know. He probably does.
Trademark.
Yeah, he does.
Now, the pressure's on you to invent something. He's invented a bar in Spain called Sharpies. We're waiting for
I'm way behind.
Far from inventing that.
Anyway, thank you very much, guys. Very enjoyable
Thank you.
chat, and
Lovely.
of course, great to have you back, my man Keish.
Yeah, good to be back. Completely enjoyed it.
Cheers, Keish.
More in the future on Squeaky Bum Time.